just looking around everyone. So welcome again. And so last week we talked, Friday actually, I introduced a little bit of getting a sense of this element of fire. Now, the idea with these elements is that we can relate to the body in the way of the elements as supported. And knowing that these elements are also everywhere in the external world and the internal world as well. So with this element of fire, we're talking about heat, temperature. And so I'll talk a little more about that later, but I think for now we can just tune into our practice and then we'll move on to a little bit of what this heat and element of fire does for us and for the world in general, and our connection to one another as well in the natural world. So maybe just taking in a deep breath and just allowing the breath to settle without having to do anything. By that, I mean just noticing it. And now you might know that when you pay attention to the breath, you pay attention to the moment, things kind of shift. And so just noticing your breathing. And if you notice yourself being a little unsettled at this moment, if you notice agitation, just allowing the agitation to be there, noticing it, and giving it that space. This is where that sense of kindness and compassion comes in. By noticing what we're kind of facing in the moment, noticing our experience and opening up to a sense of allowing, letting be. You might find that as you pay attention to your experience, you might get carried away by thoughts. There's a tendency of the mind to rescue us. And so when something becomes uncomfortable, it usually takes us in a riddle, takes us in a story, brings us to a place of comfort. And so with our practice, we just come back to the breath, we come back to the body. And maybe we can even just say thank you, but not right now. And then just coming back, understanding that this is a natural function, that there's always going to be a narrative. But in our practice, we're practicing being here in the moment. Even if the moment is not pleasant. And the idea is just to notice it, to see what's here. And by just turning towards, already softening a little bit. And so in that way, we can start out by just noticing maybe any tension or tightness in the body right now. And just pay attention to how, when you notice the tightness or the tension, it kind of just softens sometimes. And if you need to shift or adjust your pose, this is a good time to do that. So finding a pose that is comfortable for you and that you can sustain. And noticing how you're showing up for your practice today. If you're tired, if you're sleepy, perhaps giving it the importance that is needed, shifting your pose, making sure the back is straight but supported. This is when we say that to practice, sometimes we practice in a dignifying pose. A pose that says, I am here, I'm present, I'm ready. So finding a balance between comfort and alertness without tensing or tighten up. Just allowing the body to guide. So allowing the body to settle here. And this is when we invite the element of earth, the solidity of the body, sensing its weight. Maybe heaviness or lightness. And you might feel the softness of the body in contact with the surface holding you, or the stiffness of the surface against the body. Seeing if you can just stay fully engaged in this moment with your experience. Noticing how gravity keeps you in place, the pull of gravity of as the body settles in here. And this element of earth allows for some groundness, so grounding in the body. Always coming back to the feet, the hands. As the body is perceived as solid and allows for this sense of groundedness. So whenever you notice the mind going in a story or narrative or planning or thinking about anything else, just smilingly bringing your attention back, recognizing that this is normal, that the mind will distract, that the mind will wander. But really feeling through the sense of the earth, cradling the body and holding it here. And just like that, becoming one. the element of earth in the body. The element of earth in the planet. Now tuning into the fire element, heat and temperature. This is how we recognize this element. So now seeing if you can become aware of the temperature in your body, in this body. Is there heat? Is there coolness? Just noticing it all the way from the top of the head to the tips of the toes. Maybe some areas feel cool, others feel warm. And then as you navigate the body in this way and you notice the heat, the coolness, the warmth in the different parts of the body also, perhaps becoming aware of how when you stay with a certain area, it might change. What is at first felt as heat or as coolness might change. So noticing that change. And this can be very subtle. So it takes a very attentive mind to be able to notice. Becoming aware of boredom. The mind likes to be entertained and so doesn't really like to focus on things. And so just noticing that and patiently, again, practicing patience. Just coming back to noticing the warmth, the coolness, the heat, this fire element that is so alive in the human body, just like it is in nature. So bringing a sense of curiosity every time you notice temperature. Just noticing, seeing if you can stay with it until it changes, or seeing what you notice. Maybe it'll remain the same. Also noticing the urge of the mind to attend to it. Too much heat and he gets uncomfortable. Too much coldness and he gets uncomfortable. But then whatever he thinks is just perfect and he remains there. But then if he finds it pleasant, he wants more of it. So noticing when he gets bored, when he checks out, and you're just coming back, sensing temperature, coolness, heat, warmth. And so in this way, learning how the fire element manifests in the body. Just in the same way that it manifests in the world. Important to maintain ecosystems, plants. Our main source of nourishment comes from the sun, food, vitamins. So you might notice the fire element internally as well. Digestion needs heat. But there's also a sense of feeling really excited and warming up. You might have sensed that. Body warms up. So this fire element is always there. It's just like a little flame. It gets bigger sometimes when we get excited, when we get angry, fearful. But just like everything else, it arises and it falls away. And so whenever you're experiencing fear or anger, and allowing for that space, allowing for that compassion to hold it. You can always just relate it to this element. This fire element just being active. But just like the fire out in the world, it'll eventually pass. Fire needs fueling. Emotional fire is fueled by our thoughts, stories. It's no different than when fire in the outside, in the external world, is agitated. When it's agitated, it can burn. But even this burning is beneficial sometimes. There's so many species of plants, such as some pines, some types of eucalyptus, banksia. They need fire, otherwise they can't release their seeds. There's a number of other plants and other species underground. The need for the soil to burn, so the seeds can come out of dormancy, so they can sprout, they can grow. And internally as well, we have this heat. For instance, our digestive system, just like externally, things mature in the presence of heat, fruit, vegetables. Internally, also we digest in the presence of heat. And this element of fire is also in earth, volcanoes, rocks, just like it is in the human body, because this body belongs to nature, doesn't belong to us. And here is that connection of the body digesting food, going back to the earth, this heat that kind of oversees everything, this fire element, so powerful. Everything must age. Heat matures things, including our skin. And so, as you said here, contemplating this element of fire, you might even imagine like a little lively flame spark in the body that just maintains the heat, breaks down the food. And that connection to the same element everywhere else, in every single being, plants, rocks, other animal forms. There is heat in the earth externally, and there is heat in each of us. But just like a flame will eventually extinguish, the same way when we're fearful or angry, when this element is fully alive in us, it will eventually pass as well. It's vital quality, just like everything else is impermanent. Mary excuse me, Mary Oliver in her poem, Morning Poem, says, "Every morning the world is created. Under the orange sticks of the sun, the heaped ashes of the night turn into leaves again and fasten themselves to the high branches. And the ponds appear like black cloth on which are painted islands of summer lilies. If it is your nature to be happy, you will swim away along the soft trails for hours, your imagination alighting everywhere. And if your spirit carries within the thorn that is heavier than lead, if it is all you can do to keep on trudging, there is still somewhere deep within you a beast shouting that the earth is exactly what you wanted. Each pond with its blazing lilies is a prayer heard and answered. Lavishly, every morning, whether or not you have ever dared to be happy, whether or not you have ever dared to pray." So I thank you all for this practice, for your kind attention, for your kind listening. And so maybe this week, you can just notice the element of fire, the heat, the temperature, maybe in the food you eat, maybe out as you go outside, and also the heat within, the body temperature, the emotions that are driven by this fire in us as well, that we can relate it in that way. And then just knowing that this body has all the same elements that are seen in the planet. It is nature in itself. And it'll pass just like everything else. And so the contemplation of the elements is so that we learn that this body doesn't belong to us, that there is this way in which the world works, that it will eventually pass, it will mature. So I thank you.